team and one of your trainers, etc., who are extremes in chronotype, being extremely early birds or extreme night owls, and that can certainly have an impact on their ability to perform at practice and during games, depending on the time of games. Keeping a sleep diary is also useful, and then you can get objective data with activity monitors. The activity monitors that we've used are basically wristwatches, and you can even, this is what the Vancouver Canucks have been wearing, apparently, Ready Bands, which you can get at London Drugs. So at London Drugs, you actually, apparently, you rent these things, and then you wear it for a couple of weeks. It's got a little, they're just like the AccuWatches. They have a little microprocessor, so they collect motion data. And ReadyBand makes lots of claims that actually are unsubstantiated. It can't do what it says it does. But what it can do is give you a pretty accurate record of your activity. And it can tell you, from that you can discriminate wake time and sleep time. You can't discriminate really quality of sleep, certainly not sleep stages, which are some of the claims they make for that, which are not substantiated. So assessments for potential sleep disorders would be recommended, and then also strategies to minimize sleep disruptions with travel. So taking into account the objective of maximizing good sleep and minimizing sleep disruptions, to schedule flight times with that in mind, practice times when you're traveling, practice times when you're at home, hotel choice, rooms, the kinds of rooms that you take in hotels, sleep hygiene for all the players. Those would be the kinds of strategies that you would want to implement. And I'm just leaving that as sort of the general range of strategies that you would want to implement as opposed to making specific recommendations. So the second physiological system that we need to understand time of day effects, especially, is the circadian clock system. And these are typical kinds of overheads that I would use for lecture purposes at school. The point I want to make here is that we have these things called circadian clocks. Circadian clocks are genetically based timekeeping devices that are found in cells throughout the body, in all organisms. They're found in the most primitive organisms on this planet. They're found in virtually all the organs and tissues in the human body, and in many places in the brain. We have a central or a master clock, which is found in a place in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It's very famous in the field of neuroscience. It's abbreviated SCN. And this is an example of this SCN oscillating. This SCN has actually been taken out of the brain of a mouse. It's being kept in a dish. It's a transgenic mouse. So whenever this mouse has been engineered so that whenever the clock is actually made up of a set of proteins, and they regulate their own production. So you have these genes, there's about 12 of them. The first one that was discovered was called the period gene. It was discovered in the fly, fruit fly. We have the same gene. This gene turns on and it makes this protein, and it makes the protein outside of the nucleus of the cell. It makes it in the cytoplasm. The protein builds up and then it gets back into the nucleus and it turns itself off. When it turns itself off, then all that protein gets gobbled up by these other molecules until it goes away. And when it goes away, that releases the gene, so the gene can start making messenger RNA again and making more protein, so the protein rises again. It feeds back and it turns the gene off. End up in the cycle. And in fly, there's a small number of genes. In humans, we have, in mice, we have about 12 or so of these. And they're all creating these intricate loops, but it's essentially a perfect self-sustaining, cell-autonomous circadian clock. Individual neurons are oscillating. And in this place, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, there's about 10,000 of these neurons, and they're all linked together. They're all oscillating potentially independently. They don't need each other to oscillate, but they do communicate with each other, so they're a network of oscillating cells. And they're putting out these timing signals that are affecting other cells in the brain that have their own clocks, and all these all the various organs in the body, which, again, all the cells in those organs have their own clocks. We can take this suprachiasmatic nucleus out, engineer this animal so that every time this per protein gets made, the per protein, we've linked it with luciferase, which is the enzyme that fireflies make to glow. So the actual cell starts to glow whenever this per protein is being made, and that's what's being plotted here, this bioluminescence, how much light is being emitted from these neurons. And it's oscillating it can actually oscillate for years. It can oscillate beyond the lifespan of the animal. The animal's long dead. All of his brothers and sisters died of old age a long time ago, and this animal's clock is still oscillating. And we can do the same thing with other tissues as well. But what they need is they need a good strong signal from the this master clock. This is the master clock that's linked to the light-dark cycle. It synchronizes all the body rhythms to the light-dark cycle. So we're getting a little technical here, but the point I want to make is that biological clocks are intimately involved in human biology. They're linked up to all the metabolic pathways. And virtually every aspect of our physiology and our behavior is regulated by these clocks. It's quite remarkable. So manifestations of these clocks can be seen in virtually anything that you measure, almost in any aspect of human physiology and biochemistry. So what we have plotted here are body temp. This is a body temperature curve. This is a body temperature curve for a person over the course of a full day. When they're awake, that's W, so they're awake. This is time going from left to right. And then body temperature drops during sleep, and then it rises again when they're awake. It actually starts to rise before they wake up. It starts to fall before you go to sleep, suggesting that this waveform is not entirely due to the fact that you're lying down doing nothing when you're sleeping. This is a constant routine, so in this type of an experiment, the subject is kept awake continuously. They're not allowed to move around much. They lie in a bed, so they're continuously awake. The body temperature rhythm persists. That's a slightly lower amplitude, so the manifest waveform of the body temperature cycle is a combination of circadian clock control plus the effects of sleep and waking on body temperature. So even when their behavioral state is constant, you still get this daily rhythm at body temperature. This is the melatonin rhythm. It's the hormone of the night. It's secreted from the pineal gland. And it rises just before we fall asleep, and it falls just before we wake up. And this is what the melatonin rhythm looks like in somebody who's being kept awake continuously for 24 to 48 hours in one of these constant routine studies. Its waveform isn't affected at all by behavior, so this is thought to be a really nice marker for endogenous internal biological time. It's not affected by behavior. The cortisol rhythm, so this is the so-called stress hormone, but the stress hormone isn't constant waiting for something stressful to happen. The stress hormone falls at the beginning of the night and then starts to rise in advance of waking, I suppose in advance of the most stressful thing, which is waking up and interacting with the world. It's doing a lot of things that are preparing the body for the interaction with the outside world. So it's rising before we wake up, and that rhythm persists even if you are continuously awake. This is urine volume, and there's a large number of other things that we could be looking at. So we've got molecular circadian clocks producing daily rhythms in physiology, and also daily rhythms in behavior and cognition. And these are double plotted records, so the left side of each one is identical to the right side. And what's being plotted here is performance or some measure of cognition across time. So this would be 24 hours. And we're looking at here addition calculation, and these are all highly significant daily rhythms in terms of the ability to add and calculate. Digit symbol is a test that assesses a variety of aspects of cognition. This is recall memory, reaction times. These are lapses on reaction time tests. And this is subjective sleepiness. So these waveforms are actually pretty much all in phase with the body temperature cycle. So they're showing a circadian or a daily minimum early in the day, rising towards lunchtime, gradually rising to a peak performance in the early evening, and then falling off as body temperature starts to drop. Much of our brain functioning varies with time of day in parallel with the body temperature cycle. So what does this mean for for sports performance. This is a whole list of studies that have been done to illustrate something that is highly repeatable, which is that there are daily rhythms of physical and sport-specific performance. First couple here are in terms of team outcomes. That was the first line I showed you some time ago. These other studies down here, these are all various laboratory studies looking at different aspects, things like running and swimming and cycling and jumping, variety of other aspects of physical performance, standing, jump, the ability to exercise to a maximum level. All of these things show significant daily rhythmicity. And in almost all cases, the peak of performance is running in parallel with the body temperature cycle. So where body temperature tends to peak in the early evening, that's when performance on most measures of physical activity will also peak. There are a very small number of variables that might show up a peak in the morning. Those are more related to fine motor control and accuracy. So in fact, you might, in some respects, be a better golf putter in the morning than in the evening. But for most sport-specific measures, the performance is going to be better in the afternoon with a peak in the early evening. And these rhythms persist during sleep deprivation. This is an example of one of them. So these are serial reaction times. And this is total sleep deprivation in a five-a-side football marathon match. A bunch of guys were playing football continuously for 1, 2, 3, 4 consecutive days with, I think they were allowed small breaks, like 5-minute breaks once every hour, some crazy stunt like that. And they're looking at serial reaction times. And there's